Hey everybody, it's Robot here from Vespa Motorsport and scooterwest.com here in sunny San Diego. What do we have in San Diego? We don't have a winter. But today I'm going to show you how to winterize your scooter, because most parts of the world it may get to temperatures and a climate or a condition that you may just not want to ride the scooter for 6 months. So I'm going to go over all my tips on how to winterize a scooter, even though I'm from San Diego and I'm always wearing short sleeve shirts and I ride year round. But I won't talk about what I do. I want to talk about what you're going to do to your scooter before you put away for storage for about 6 months. Keep in mind, this is not the steps you do if you're going to store the scooter for 3 years. Especially on a carbureted scooter, you're going to want to do a little bit more before you store away a scooter for a long period of time. But winterization, a couple steps for success where the scooter, especially a carbureted scooter such as this 2007 LX, some extra steps you should take to get this scooter where you'll successfully be able to start it and run it when you awaken the scooter in springtime. So on to the shameless promotion of our scooter shop, scooterwest.com. We offer a winterization kit for various size scooters. Comes with these 3 basic items. A scooter cover of various sizes based on the scooter size, a high quality automatic battery charger maintaining, so it just will never overcharge or boil away the battery. And last but not least, a high quality Lucas fuel stabilizer. So if you buy the 3 of these items together, there's a $10 discount that's automatically applied. And search our website, scooterwest.com, for Winter 01 all the way through Winter 04. So based on the size of your scooter. If you have a large scooter, Winter 04 is going to have you covered. GTS, Winter 03. For this size scooter, Winter 02, and you'd get this cover a little bit. And Winter 01's ideal for a small 50cc scooter. And during this video, I'll show you how to use these items. With exception of the cover, you can see another video I did recently that shows how to fit a cover. Pretty much just form fits over the scooters, kind of like putting pants on. All right, so hypothetically, we're beginning of November. I live in Chicago and it's about 30 degrees, cold rain, and it's only going to get worse for the next couple months. I'm sorry, but I don't really want to ride the scooter. I'm going to take public transportation, but the worst thing you can do is just leave this thing out in the street and hope for the best. First of all, you want to have a sheltered place to store the scooter, if possible. Whether it's a shed, a friend's garage, a storage facility that's indoors. It doesn't need to be climate controlled or anything. The scooter can handle the low temperatures. If it's negative 20 degrees, the battery's going to probably have some problems, but at that point you probably want to take the battery out and put it indoors and keep it on a maintainer or somewhere where it just stays warm. But first of all, you want to have your scooter all maintained and up to snuff before you put it away. I would recommend servicing it, making sure it's serviced up to the service intervals, such as this LX got 3,600 miles. Hasn't had the 3,500 mile service. I would recommend doing that service. So it's got fresh fluids like engine oil in it. The tires and brake fluid are fresh. If you have old fluids, those old fluids are going to have moisture in them. And just the long-term storage with older fluids sometimes can attack some of the metal parts, especially on the braking system. So that's my number 1 tip before you put it away in storage. Make sure it's all serviced up. Clean the scooter, wipe it down. Like when you pull it back out of storage, be excited, it's all ready to go. If you're in a climate where there's a lot of humidity or moisture, you're near the sea, it might be advisable to wax the whole thing, especially these chrome parts. I could feel all the pitting on these mirrors that are well over 10 years old. This scooter most likely has been in San Diego its whole life. This stuff would stay so much nicer if you just put once a year just a coat of wax. All this stuff would stay nice. No one does that, but that would be my 2nd tip. The 3rd tip, this scooter is carbureted. The problem with carburetors and modern fuel with a lot of ethanol you give it 1 month and the fuel has already degraded, especially the small amount of fuel that resides in the carburetor. Typically that fuel will deteriorate quicker than what's in the tank because the tank's got a massive body of fuel. You want to make sure you have a full tank of fresh fuel. Have this scooter all the way filled up. And then you want to add a fuel stabilizer to it. So this fuel stabilizer, they specify 2 ounces for every gallon. There's 8 ounces in this bottle. Typically a Vespa is about 2 gallons, so 2 ounces is more than adequate. There's 2 ounces right there, so you just bring it right down to the 6 ounce mark. Pretty straightforward. Open the seat, and as most Vespas, fuel cap is just underneath here. Missing the battery cover and under seat. You just pour it right in with a full tank of gas and then go ahead and put the cap back on. Next, I would just ride the scooter around the block once, especially if it's carbureted. The whole idea of that is it will mix this stuff with the fuel and it will circulate into the fuel lines and ultimately into the bowl of the carburetor. After that, I'd highly recommend running the fuel out of the carburetor or draining the carburetor. There is a flat-bladed screw on the bottom of the carburetor and a little hose that goes down the left side of the motor where the fuel can drain. If you unscrew that screw about a half turn or full turn, it will drain the fuel out of the float bowl without the scooter running. The problem is that screw is really difficult to access on these scooters. So short of like really tipping the carburetor or removing the carburetor, it's not really feasible. There's a much easier way to get the fuel out of the carburetor on a carbureted modern Vespa, whether it's a GT200 or this LX. So here we have the carburetor. It's got a fairly fresh fuel line and the vacuum lines. All that stuff is degraded. Now these scooters are 10 years old, so if that stuff is still original, definitely recommend changing it. The best way to drain the fuel is if your fuel tap's working fine, that's the vacuum operated valve, is you pinch off this vacuum line. And what this vacuum line does is it puts a vacuum signal to the fuel tap at the bottom of the tank and allows fuel to run through this line. And if that vacuum fuel tap or petcock is working correctly, if you starve it of a vacuum or a low pressure, it's not going to flow fuel. So with that line pinched off, I'll go ahead and start the scooter, and the scooter runs fine. So it starts up, no problem. It's on the choke. And we'll just speed the video up, but I'm going to run it for a while and you'll eventually see the motor falter out. And that's when the carburetor's truly run out. And I'm going to open up the gas a little bit. Now, see, I'm giving it gas. I'll continue to do that. Until the motor just stalls out on its own. And that's pretty much all the fuel has been run out of the carburetor. And now that you complete that, you can take the forceps off the vacuum line. If it never runs out of fuel, well then you probably have a faulty fuel tap, which is something you may want to fix because you can end up with a flooded motor or you can end up with fuel in your oil. Alternatively, you can pinch off the fuel line, but that's the best way to run the carburetor out of fuel. So now that you have the fuel run out of the carburetor and all your other fluids are fresh in the scooter, we're going to put a tender on the battery. 2 ways to go about it. Like I said, if you're storing this in very cold climate, you could put this scooter outside where it's exposed to much colder temperatures, but the battery, don't want to subject it to the very low sub-freezing temperatures. The acid in there doesn't freeze at the same temperature as water, it's much lower, but may be advisable to put it indoors, even in a garage where it's like 10 or 20 degrees warmer than the outside temperature, even though it's not heated, basement or whatever. Pretty simple, just remove the 2 screws. You can put that off to the side. But maybe you don't have the pigtails off the battery. Pretty straightforward to hook up any of these maintainer style battery tenders. This is the Optimate one, which is a very high quality battery maintainer here. And just out of the box, includes the pigtail leads if you want to hardwire it. If not, you have the pair of alligator clips. Pretty straightforward. You just hook them right there. Just make sure it doesn't short on the frame. These chargers typically come with a very long cord. And you can go ahead and plug it in and just plug it in the wall and forget about it. Whether the battery is stored inside or you have the scooter in a warm enough climate. This will preserve your battery. Typically the battery sits for 6 months. It's going to lose quite a bit of its charge, maybe so much charge that it's not going to crank the scooter over when you return to operating the scooter in spring. Any of these chargers, they use very little power because it's like a switch mode power supply. Some of the older battery tenders that are heavier, they'll tend to use a little bit more. You know, you're talking probably $1 or $2 of electricity is not much. So that's pretty much the preparation I would take for storing a scooter for about 6 months. Anything longer, you may want to put oil into the spark plug. Drain the tank if it's going to be stored for several years for some reason, and at that point you may need to just dispose of the battery and start with a new battery, but most importantly not have any fuel in any of the system. But the fresh fluid's important. Stabilizer in the fuel. Running a carburetor out of fuel is very important. There's so many scooters that come through here in San Diego, California. People don't ride them, it's too cold. It's 51 degrees out, come on, you can ride. And year after year, they come back and need the carburetor cleaned out. And easy steps to prevent that. Only took me a few minutes of my time to prep the carburetor for storage. Thereafter, I would probably lock the steering, keep children away from the scooter or just to secure it. Then put a scooter cover over it to protect it. The one thing I see is sometimes the scooters are in a garage and they end up with scratches because boxes fall on them, people run into them with their cars or brush up against them. So a cover is going to minimize that damage, and if it falls over with the cover on, it's going to protect it. It's not guaranteed, but might protect a little bit more. You don't really want the scooter falling over. All right, so now it's springtime. What do? Pop the battery back in, turn your ignition on, let's see what happens. Want to make sure battery's all the way charged. Of course, with a maintainer, it's going to have a full charge. Tank's still full, that's no issue there. The stabilizer in there, it can just stay in there. And pretty much just start the scooter. It's going to take a little bit because the fuel needs to flow back to the carburetor. And allow it, if it's a carbureted scooter, allow it to idle for a few minutes. Even a fuel injected scooter, it's worthwhile to let it idle for a few minutes. Make sure the scooter doesn't stall out or there isn't any problems. There's a chance it still may clog a jet, maybe a little bit of debris that just flushed into the carburetor, who knows, but definitely minimizes it by draining the carburetor. Hope that helped everybody out, especially if you're looking to store your scooter for the winter, whether you're in a warm climate and just have to be away from the scooter for a few months. I'm talking as short as like 2 months. I would probably take those steps. 1 month, they usually can sit for 1 month, a carbureted scooter, but 2 months to 6 months, these would be the perfect steps to take, even up to a year. Anything longer, definitely more steps to it. Hope that helped everybody out with the modern Vespa and how to winterize it. Those same steps would apply for a vintage Vespa. It's obviously easier to run those things out of gas. They have a manual fuel tap, and those carburetors are less likely to clog compared to these modern Vespas with the carburetors. Fuel injection, there's no pinching off the lines. The fuel's under pressure, and as long as you have stabilizer in there, I've seen them sit for 3 years and they'll start right up with no problems because the fuel pump puts the fuel under pressure, and if there's any debris in there, it usually typically will just the pressure and atomization will wash away any of that varnish that builds up on the injector. Until next time, it's Robot here from Vespa Motorsport and ScooterWest.com. Check out our website for everything Vespa, whether you have a vintage Vespa, a modern Vespa. Subscribe to our YouTube channel. You own any Vespa, anywhere from the 40s all the way up to a modern, the latest new Vespa. I got videos for you covered, whether you're maintaining it, looking for cool accessories, customization. I try to have you covered on all that good stuff. And I try to get a couple videos out a week. Unfortunately, in the summers when I get really busy and kind of back off. So subscribe to the channel, hit the little bell, and then you get notified on new videos coming out. Until next time here, Robot